All right, so yesterday we assembled all the cabinets and got them ready for install, put them in all the places that they're gonna be going. So I've already got all my cabinets struck out on the wall. I actually struck them out in that rough-in video where I showed you guys how to rough in your under cabinet lights. And today we're gonna be assembling all these boxes, and I'll show you guys how you can accomplish this alone without a ledger board. Now, the main reason I'm not gonna use a ledger board today is because I've got wires in the wall and I've got stuff in the way, and I know I can hold them up when I lighten them up and put them in place just fine. If you don't feel confident in holding the cabinet up and you think it might be a little heavy for you, put a ledger board up. It's not bad. You just strike a level line, put up a laser, put up a little 1x4 on the wall. That's all I'm talking about when I talk about a ledger board. It's just putting a board on the wall at the height of the cabinets that you could rest it on, know that it's going to be level, and it might make it pretty easy for you guys to install. I've installed literally hundreds of kitchens because I do large commercial contracts with 200, 300 plus kitchens in one sweep, and you don't have time to put a ledger board up for every single one. So I've gotten pretty confident in holding the box and attaching it to the wall without one. So that's how I'm going to do it today. But by all means, if you want to do one to make your life easier, go ahead and put a 1x4 on the wall. But the very first step that we're going to be doing today is I'm going to take all the doors off the cabinets. I'm going to keep each cabinet, I'm going to do it in order and lay them all out in order so the right doors go with the right cabinet. Sometimes you'll take your hinges off and there'll be shims from the manufacturer behind the hinges of the doors. So I want to keep the doors for the specific cabinet in order, set aside safely where they're not going to get marked up. So let's go ahead and very first, let's go ahead and get all these doors off of the cabinets. I've got all my doors off at this point, and the reason that I took all the doors off is because it makes it a lot easier to connect your face frames together with the clamps without the doors on. I've seen guys in commercial situations or just like production situations where they'll just hold it up and slam them together, but you just cannot pull them perfect that way. It makes the box a lot lighter, easier to handle when you're installing it. You don't have to worry about damages. Makes it easier to attach the face frames to one another. This is how I was taught to do it. This is how I've always done it. And this is how I would recommend you do it also to get a professional finish when installing your kitchen. Now, there's a few things to consider when you're starting your kitchen. For one is your starting point. Now, usually cabinets have some like typical measurements, 34.5 for the base cabinets from the high point if you're gonna measure for your uppers, and then 54 inches to the bottom of the upper cabinets. And usually you want to go off of the high point with that, especially if you have a slab that's very out of level. So I found the high point in here. Actually, this floor is sitting pretty level, so I'm good on this wall. And I'm going to go off of this cabinet first because this is going to dictate the height of all my uppers. So I have measured 36 inches down off of this and made a crow's foot. And then I set up my laser level on that crow's foot, and that's going to be the height of all my cabinets. Okay, so I've got my first filler attached, and the very first thing let's go over is the type of clamps that I use. I have several different clamps. I have some furniture clamps that screw in. I have some pump clamps for like larger pieces that certain clamps won't reach. And then I have my cabinet clamps, which will clamp the face frames together. And then they have this other adjustment right here that'll pull the face frames together. These work pretty good when the cabinets aren't attached to the wall as far as like pulling the face frames and stuff like that. But when they're attached to the wall already, especially like base cabinets that are already screwed to the wall, it can be hard to attach them. So sometimes I like to attach all my cabinets for a section first with these so I can pull the face frames perfect if the option is there. But for my uppers, I'm gonna be lifting one at a time because I'm one guy, and they just would be too heavy to do more than one at once. Now, the first thing that we're gonna do before we install these cabinets is we're gonna find all our studs. I can see where the old cabinets were screwed to the wall, so I have a general idea of where the studs are, but I do know that that installer missed a couple of them. So I'm gonna double check with my stud finder. This is a great stud finder. It'll find the dead center of the stud. See that green light that lit up? And it'll just follow it through the entire wall. And it also has like a little electric symbol here if you have a wire that's close, so you can be like careful when you're drilling through stuff because you don't want to hit anything that's in the wall. So I'm gonna go ahead and just strike out all the studs now, and I'll circle them with a pencil so I can differentiate the crow's feet that I put for my cabinet layout from the studs. I'm just gonna carry through the entire wall and find every single stud. I know there's one here right next to the receptacle. And that's another thing I like about this is like you've got the whole top that will show you where a stud is, versus the other stud finders that just have a little pointer. So you don't necessarily have to like use that little green dot that lights up when you find the dead center of it. You can just follow it through the wall and it's pretty accurate. I checked to make sure I hit all my studs. I did. Now that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna transfer the mark from the wall to the back of the cabinet. And I know that I've compensated for my filler and my face frame, and then I'll measure off of that crow's foot to the screw hole. We're at 13.5 inches. Now what I like to do is just transfer that mark to the cabinet, and you'll notice on the backs of your cabinets, there's like thicker spots that aren't just the very thin 1/4 inch. You'll have like the actual frame out of it with a 1/2 inch material. So I'm gonna measure onto that. I'm just gonna go ahead and pre-drill those marks that I just made. These are the screws that I use to attach my fillers. It's just a GRK trim head screw. And then these are my cabinet screws. They're 2.5 inch and they've got like the washer built into the head. I've got my pre-drilled holes. I'm gonna go ahead and put my screws where they belong. You really wanna plumb up these face frames because this is gonna dictate the entire run. So all we gotta do is send the screws home. Okay guys, I've got my filler attached to my cabinet. I put a 1 inch filler on there, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure right here. I've got 1.25 inches, and then I'll measure to both of the studs I have marked. I have one at 2 and I have one at 13.5. I'll transfer those marks onto the back of my cabinet. Now all I have to do is pre-drill those holes. And also what I like to do, just for ease of install when I have it up, is I'm gonna put a screw in each one of those pre-drilled holes that I just made. I wanna make sure, I've got a 3-piece crown system going on here, so I have got to make sure that these are flush. Now what I like to do is measure off the back, and I can see I'm 11 on center off of the inside of the cabinet. So I'm gonna transfer that mark to the inside of my cabinet. Got to be careful with this. You don't want to have any blowouts. So double check. 11 on center. I'm gonna pre-drill into that cabinet. That's one of my least favorite holes to drill, because if you're not perfectly square, it's a little harder to judge on the inside like this. So I watch it the whole time. These first two are in and attached. This is really like the most time consuming part to get it started, get the first row plumb and level. And now we'll just keep on knocking them out all the way. So our very next box is our microwave cabinet. I'm gonna share this one with you also because you've got a hole to drill for your receptacle. Now don't forget about your, a lot of people just forget about this face frame. Don't forget about it. You lose a 1/2 inch between both the cabinets. So instead of doing the math, I just make a mark at a 1/2 inch. There's nothing to remember. And now I can just mark it out. I'm just gonna put a level on top of this. Level it, make a little line. And I'm gonna measure down from the top. And where I'm measuring this, I'm measuring up right above the screw. So 11 3/4 the ears will catch, 15.5 the ears will catch. There's plenty of different methods on how to cut your holes in your cabinets. I've just personally found that using a jigsaw seems to cut the best and the straightest. So I'm gonna carefully plunge cut this first cut. I'm gonna feel the flushness and just tack one of these screws in to hold my cabinet in place. I'll share with you guys connecting these. Now I like to drill from the microwave cabinet because this cabinet will be used less often and you will not see the trim head screws when they're in. So we're just gonna pre-drill. And these torque heads are the only way to go. I'll tell you, if you try and use a Phillips head and your bit slips off of it, you could really chip your cabinet faces. These are much more error proof. we're just flushing it up, just like that. At this point, all of my uppers on this first row are up. I've got a short day today because I have this doctor's appointment, or I'd set every single cabinet today, but I'm gonna focus on the uppers, and now I'm gonna work over here to this refrigerator area. And I'll tell you that this is probably gonna be the most difficult part. For one, this cabinet that goes above the fridge is only 24 inches deep, and the refrigerator panels that build out to give you the built-in effect on your refrigerator are 27 inches. So the first thing that I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to build out this upper cabinet. And essentially what I do is I just get a doubled up 2x4 on the top and the bottom. I'll attach that to the wall, and then I'll attach the cabinet to that, and that'll give me the sufficient 3 inches for build out to match the refrigerator panels. I put a level on the ground and made sure that it was level, because if you're working a high point over 36 inches, it could very easily be a little bit like a quarter or so out, in which case your panel will be lifted off the ground when you put your cabinet in level above the refrigerator. So keep that in mind. I leveled the ground first, made sure I set the tile so I know it's pretty level. It was actually really level right here. So I was able to cut them both the same exact measurement, but keep that in mind. And now I'm just looking at them in the light, because this painted wood, it'll show some things from time to time, and I wanna see which is gonna be the prettier panel to put on the outside where you're gonna see it. And yeah, I'm liking the finish on this one more, so this is gonna be the one I dedicate to the left-hand side of the refrigerator, because you're gonna see it all the time. So it's just good to be conscientious of this kind of things when you're installing cabinets. If you have two like the same size cabinet, and one of them maybe has a little bit of a beat up edge that you wouldn't see if they were together, strategically try and move that around and hide it, because you're not always gonna get a replacement cabinet for like a little scrape or a little tiny scratch. And I have touch-up kits, but no touch-up kit's gonna make it look as good as the final paint. So I always think about this kind of stuff when I'm installing my kitchens and look around, because obviously I've done a lot of these, and I've run into a situation where it's like, man, I wish I thought of that before. But I'm letting you guys know now so you can be one step ahead of the curve. I'm gonna go ahead, glue these things up now the way they go in, and then I'll show you guys attaching the 2x4s to the wall. We'll get that cabinet set, and then it's just two uppers after that. But I wanna share with you guys this refrigerator. They could be intimidating if you've never done them. And even if you have done them, you could run into several issues, and I don't know, but I'll share it along the way. Let's see how it goes. That's our build out. It'll do a couple things. It's gonna not only build out that upper to meet the front of the panels, but it's also gonna help us hold our sides in true. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in place. It's in, it looks pretty good. It looks like I need to adjust a couple things a little bit, but I've got it to the wall. That's the hardest part. And I'm also looking, and my 2x4 seems to have not built me out by maybe like 1/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna throw a couple shims behind that. Make sure you don't wanna pull those refrigerator panels with the clamps. You want to pull the cabinet off the wall a little bit. So I'll loosen those screws, sneak a couple shims behind it, get it where I want it, and then we can attach it to the panels. I'm gonna go over how to install your base cabinets, how to get started. The very first thing that I did was I struck out all my cabinets on the wall, made sure that they're gonna land where I want them to. I already figured out my fillers and everything. So all I gotta do is go make my cuts and get that started. But what you need to do before you start to install your base cabinets is you need to find all the high points in your floor. And what I like to do is I use a laser, and I'll set the laser up horizontally. This is auto leveling. And then I'll go around the perimeter of the area that I'm going to be installing my base cabinets, and I'll take a bunch of measurements. So it looks like my highest point is gonna be over here, because it's my lowest measurement, meaning that it's closest to the line, it's the highest point in the floor. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna reposition this laser so that I can see all the way into the corner. And I just wanna see if this corner raises even a little bit more. And yeah, that's the high point. I'm right at 1.5 inches. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of an X right there. I have a good bit of shimming to do in here, unfortunately, but that'll happen from time to time. Laser for me makes it a lot easier, and I'm able to, if you could see this front corner right here, I'm splitting the line between the front and the back, and this was my high point. Now I could also put a cabinet over here and make sure that the laser was true, and I actually have to build up what I think I do, but I already put a tape on it and I'm sure that that's what it is. And like I was saying previously, if you don't want to start, let's say my high point was in the center, that might not be a good place to start my cabinet, but what I'll do is I'll slide that cabinet into place, I'll scribe the wall where the high point is, and then I'll move my laser up and set my laser to the high point, and then I can start from wherever I want to in the room and just shim to the laser. Another way to do it is just to put a level on the wall, mark your high point and level it over. So you don't need to have a laser, you could do this with just a level. If you watched my cabinet assembly video, I told you that when I assemble my cabinets, I leave my toe kick out. And this is the exact reason why I have. You can see already over this cabinet, I have to shim this about 1/8 of an inch on either side. Now for this cabinet, it'd be easy to reach onto the side because I don't have a cabinet next to it, but you can envision when you have a run of cabinets and there's a cabinet right next to it, it's gonna be nearly impossible to put your shim underneath in the back. And you'll have to pull your cabinet out, set your shim in, put your cabinet on top of it, and hope that you hit it the way that you're trying to. And a lot of times you have to pull it in and out a few times to get it to sit how you want with the shim that you're setting on the ground first. With this situation, and leaving the toe kick open, you could simply reach underneath the toe kick and slide it in and out and get it where you want it. I personally don't like to use wood shims. I use these composite shims. They advertise that it's insect repellent. I don't get it for that. I get these shims because they're not going to wear out over time, get moldy or anything like that. And I feel like they're just gonna last the test of time a lot longer than a wood shim would, especially if people are wet mopping their floor or whatever else. All I'm gonna do over here before I attach anything is I'm just gonna cheat the front up a little bit to get my shim in. I can see I've already started to almost split that line. And give it just a little more. And I'm gonna do the same thing in the back. And I'm sitting perfectly level. I can see the laser line, it looks perfect. I wanna make sure that I didn't just mess up my refrigerator panel. It's still sitting perfectly plumb. So now at this point, I'm good to go ahead and set this up. Now in this corner over here, I'm working with a sink base, and he didn't want a dead space cabinet. He said he never used it, he doesn't reach in there, so we eliminated the dead space cabinet. So I'm gonna have to put a ledger board up, which is just a 1x4 screwed to the wall to support the stone. And sometimes on inside corners, if I don't feel like I'm getting a good bite on my studs, I'll even run that 1x4 underneath all the way to the ground just to give it that extra support, because that stone's heavy. You wanna make sure that you're supporting it good. Another part of the base cabinet install that might be a little intimidating to people, especially DIYers, is cutting for your pipes. And let me just show you guys how I get this right every single time. Now I know I'm putting a 3-inch filler on the face frame of this. I know that this cabinet's 24 inches, so I have 27 there, plus the 1/4 inch of the face, because it has a little lip on the sides, just like the uppers. So what I've done is I've measured off of my corner, 27 1/4, and then I've struck a plumb line all the way down to the ground with my level. Now, never measure your pipes off the floor. Always measure off of your laser line or your level line, because I'm gonna be shimming over here. I'll likely have a 1/4 inch of shims here. And if I'm trying to get a nice tight hole for all my pipes to stick through, a 1/4 inch might throw you off a little bit. So I'll measure from this line and I'll measure from this line. I'll draw and make my marks around the pipes so I know which one is which measurements. And then I'll transfer my marks onto the back of the cabinet. This eliminates any room for error because I don't have a wall to measure off of. I have another cabinet here. So just do all the math first and make your line, and then you can just take your measurement, and there's no math that you have to do to manipulate your measurement because you've already manipulated it by putting your line on there and adjusting it for the cabinet that's here, the filler that's here, and the face frame overhang. That'll help a lot. And I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna mark all this out, and then I'll drill the cabinets and I'll show you guys the hole saws and how I do it. And let me show you guys one more trick to finding the centers of your pipes. And this is a trick somebody showed me years ago. I can't remember if it was my father or who it was, but I've picked it up since and it's made it a lot easier. If you're measuring off of your line and you hold your tape measure level, it can be hard to eye the center of that pipe. So what I like to do is I'll run the tape measure on it and it'll clean the pipe and just make a little mark. And then I can be sure that I know what the dead center of my pipe is. It might be easier to see on this. So take a look at this blue pipe. I'm gonna hold this tape measure where it's supposed to go. And then I'm just gonna scratch it. And if you see, I've got a mark now, dead center of that pipe. I've got all my measurements transferred to the back of my sink base, and now I'm just going to kind of slide it back before I commit to my holes. I'm just going to gently put this thing in place where it goes, roughly. And I want to look at the back, and I should be able to see just by eye if my measurements were close or if they weren't. Now I've got a just regular hole saw for the pipe with a Lennox quick release bit. The arbor. I like these because you can just pop it right out when you get something stuck in there. I'll go with a 7/8 inch mortising bit for the other holes, for the pipes. I'm gonna go off on my mark and I'm gonna pre-drill from the back just with a regular bit, just to get my placement on the other side. But I never drill the hole from the back because you'll blow out the front and peel this veneer that's finished on your cabinets. It's much cleaner if you drill from the inside. I do the same thing with the hole saw. I'll start from the back only until the drill bit comes through, and I'll switch around and hit it from the front. And there's our holes. Now I've got the outlet to cut, but before I cut it, let's just see how we did, because we'll be able to slide it back from this point. See my level mark, and it looks like we did pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that outlet now. There's our holes. This was one of the worst ones I had in a while, guys. And you can see I got it dead level from side to side. I had to shim it every which way. I ended up gluing shims to the right underneath this cabinet. See how high that is off the ground? So I'll have to trim that out at the end. This doesn't always happen, but from time to time it does. But you also want to cross level everything. And you can see from across, the laser line does really well. If you follow that laser and split that laser across your faces, you do pretty good. So dead zero all the way across, that's what we're going for. So all the base cabinets are installed, and I wanted to share with you guys building these boxes at the bottom of your cabinets for your toe kick. So I used a square, and I squared up some 1x, and then I furred out in the front the thickness of the first toe kick that matches the cabinet, and then you get the skin that goes on over top after. And this will just brace the inside corner bottoms for you when you're installing all your toe kick. So what I just showed you was a little box that I build to brace my toe kick. You don't want to just butt these very thin sheets together. And then what I like to do is I just will put a little bit of liquid nail or some other kind of glue. I just had liquid nail in my trailer. It's a little bit rougher of a cleanup, so be careful with your tube. But I'll just put a nice bead all the way across it. And be careful, these liquid nail bottles will pop every now and then, and it just goes everywhere, and they like to leak. So keep an eye on it. Just set those in place. I already cut these to length. And I like to just pin it now. So just put a little pin nail in it to hold it until that glue dries. And you'll notice when you put these skins on, you won't be able to see it unless I've got the camera, but there's gonna be a raw edge. Where the range goes, that doesn't really matter. But on the outside over here, it's an eyesore, and I don't think painting it will really cover up. So what I do is I get a little piece of scribe molding, just like you put on the sides of your cabinets, and I will just 45 or 90 the corners of those and run it to the face frame and then down to the floor to cover that raw edge. But now you can see that's a good finished look. It's glued. When that liquid nails dries, I promise you it's not going anywhere. And that's pretty much your entire kitchen install outside of putting on your handles and quarter round. If you learned something, enjoyed the video, drop me a like, subscribe to my channel. I do a ton of different trades. I'll be sharing all types of different tips, techniques to total remodels along the way. So if you're a DIYer, I'll have a lot of good content for you, and you can learn a lot of stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. Catch you on the next one.